Last time I took a look at one of your accounts, I showed you how to build the perfect Doom Terminator Vulcan account. Well, we're taking the principles in my team building video that I released not too long ago, and this time we're showing you Mockman. Say hello to Cujo. He's a level 240 VIP 7 member of the Idle Heroes community. He's an active member of my streams. He's been paying a lot of attention to the advice I put out there, and I love his account. Check out this S-tier Mockman. Mwah! Chef's kiss. He invested heavily in this, and it is one heck of a copy. It's not quite perfect yet, but he's getting there. Crit, holy damage, giant killer, control immunity offset is not a bad copy. Crit boosts your critical chance, holy damage increase your damage, giant killer doubles your damage, and control immunity offset is kind of based. If you didn't know, Mockman, once he starts getting his Destiny stuff, is actually able to stun opponents at some point. Is it this one here? Yeah, there's a 50% chance to stun the targets for 2 rounds. So actually, control immunity offset does something. Because they decided, what does Mockman not have? Oh, crowd control? Let's give it to him. Nice. Also, you can see we've opted in for what I would call the perfect 4, which is a Tenant, Halora, and Betty. So our Tenant of choice is an Alamac, only with 5.7 million attack. I wish this was higher. This is one of the weaknesses of running Mockman, is you're forced to use Alamac as exactly a Tenant. You can't have him as a second homeowner, so that means your Alamac is at a disadvantage. If you guys are looking to build a Mockman account, one of the things I would recommend is some investment into your treasure train, because at least then you can boost up the Mockman attack stat. Thanks to the 2.6 million fixed attack we gain from here, at least your Alamac is breaking 5 million attack, which is good, right? It's not perfect, it's just good. However, if you really wanted to push this, we'd want a train that was up there in the 4 millions, but that's quite expensive to get to. Your other option, which I think is probably more reliable, is Destiny on Alamac. However, I'd probably want you to get a full lineup of 6 Transcendence Heroes before you considered that, because that will prevent you from, wasting time picking up cores for Alamac, and then you've also got the other problem of needing to get his sublimation. Just prioritize your heroes that matter. But that's something to think about. If you ever get to a point where you're like, this Alamac's underperforming, Destiny on him will help. The other bonus to putting Destiny on Alamac is it enhances Mockman, because Alamac is a Tenant for Mockman. And if you haven't seen, Destiny Tenants give so much attack and HP. Brilliant to add. Definitely worth doing in the future. Now, we have our Halora here, opted in for a second homeowner. That gives her a little bit of speed. I like this decision. We've got her here with speed precision. Nice choice. Because she's not a Tenant, you don't need speed attack. So speed precision is actually really good, because it means that enemies who need to block don't. And that's really nice. You might think, oh, precision's a damage stat, blah, blah, blah. It improves your roll damage dealt. But it stops the blocks. Stopping the blocks is based. So, yeah, very cool. You've got here as well Demon Bell for energy feed. I'll love to see it. And then we've got Betty with Elusive Mirror. So no Dragon Receptor on this account. This is much more budget than other accounts I've shown you before. I know there's an S-tier Mockman, but if you just leave that, if you pretend it was like an A-, but yeah, this is good. Elusive Mirror gives energy to Betty, very important, and at the start of rounds it will also boost up your energy as well, which will trigger Betty in further rounds and continuously have crowd control. Speed precision on here as well. I'd probably go for something HP based. Oh, never mind! Bro's cooking, he's got HP precision. Haha, excellent. So yeah, really good account, very clean. One thing you could have opted for was to leave Betty a Tree of Origin 1, save yourself from Stellar Shards. You didn't need to go to Tree of Origin 3. All that matters is the core. However, you have bumped up her active skill a little bit, which improves her damage a tiny touch, gives her a little bit more reliable crowd control. So I don't hate this, and maybe you want to get to Tree of Origin 4 so you can begin improving these bonuses here that will actually improve your control precision, which is pretty good. Also, your energy as well. So if you want to maximize Betty's energy feed and control precision, upgrading passive 2, which you get at Tree of Origin 4, is not a bad idea. You see a lot of people with Tree of Origin 4 Bettys, especially if they have spare Stellar Shards. Now, whenever I see an account with over-invested Bettys, one thing I want to check is how close we are to another Transcendence Hero. Because if we had not a lot of Stellar Shards and we were very close to another Transcendence Hero, we'd have a problem. However, that's not the case here. We're very, very far away from another Transcendence Hero. we still have 2 million stellars. We're okay. The other big thing here is the Natalie. Love this choice. When you're building a Mockman account, it's difficult to choose who your 5th hero should be. You've got Mockman, you've got Ailamak, you've got Halora, which gives you Abyssal Corruption and extra all damage dealt. Really helps the Mockman win condition, which is Burst. And then you've got the Betty for control, just in case your Burst isn't good enough. Here, the option of Natalie is based. Natalie's active skill will buff your hero with the highest attack. It's really good. It increases attack, holy damage, damage reduction, and crit damage. Really nice. She also has the chance to give shields and added protection, and Natalie herself does tons of damage to the enemy who has the highest attack, which means Natalie helps with burst. So not only is she a bursty hero, she helps your main damage dealer. Very, very good hero. Absolutely cracked. If you had her at A tier, she would be amazing. A contender for Destiny, I would go so far to say. Natalie's Destiny upgrades are really, really good. However, you do want to prioritize improving the Ailamak first, as he is Destiny here for Mockman. When it comes to your 6th Transcendence hero, this is very, very debatable. One thing this team lacks is dodge. We have no dodge available to this lineup, and sometimes that's just something you need against annoying opponents like Valkyrie, whose basic attack, if you don't dodge, will mince you to pieces. Perhaps you're fighting enemies who are going to do lots of crowd control, and you need some protection from that. If you can't already tell, I'm leaning towards Elena. Elena gives us so much as a hero. You get dodge, control removal. If you get a core, you can reduce the duration of crowd control effects, which means you don't have to run Control Purify anymore. And she herself is just a very, very, very good support hero with lots of small stat increases around her abilities. And sometimes if she high rolls with Mamore, Uprising, or the other boosts she gets here, she can give you protection or extra damage. It's very, very nice, very versatile hero, one of the best, and very, very good if you Destiny improve her. Her Destiny transition abilities are insane. So I really would love Elena as a future choice. However, she's not the only option. The other thing we could lean on is Alakita. This new hero that's definitely doing the rounds. Lots of people are loving experimenting with Alakita at the moment. She turns negative effects into buffs. What's very cool about that, especially on a Mockman account, is it makes Mockman even more aggressive. Let's say you're facing an opponent who steals your attack, someone like Tix. Alakita says, why don't we just gain attack instead? Damage. Great hero. Really, really cool. Very nice for improving the burst potential of Mockman for that reason, and also protects the team as a whole. So Alakita, really worth considering. And there's further burst synergy with Natalie, because Natalie actually loves it when negative effects hit opponents. Natalie increases the duration of effects on the field. Very cool hero who does so much extra damage against opponents with negative effects as well. Very, very neat upgrades. Synergizes with Alakita brilliantly. The two of them work great, which means that Mockman doesn't feel like he's doing all the heavy lifting. He actually is able to share the load with these heroes, and obviously then he cleans up later on. It's very, very good. The other option you can consider, if you want to be a little more conservative, is probably the weaker of the options we're saying here, but it's Freya. Freya is able to give you control protection. She's able to give you a lot of damage reduction. That's mainly her key strength. And if you do upgrade this final passive, she gives you extra damage against poisoned opponents. The big stuff, though, is that initial layer of Evolutionary Factor is immediate control immunity and damage reduction for the team. You do get shields by the second active, and as the fight goes on, you will gain all damage reduction and attack, and if that gets upgraded, that's as much as 12% all damage reduction every round that you're gaining, and then it fades after 3 rounds, so you can get up to 3 stacks on here. Very, very reliable to keep you alive. So I like this. Freya's a good option. I don't think she's necessarily your best pick here, though. I think Elena and Alakita are definitely the better of the two. Elephant in the room, though, is your next Tenant for Mockman, a hero that no doubt you've heard people talk about. She's extremely controversial. Some love her, some hate her. It's Arania. Arania is this weird support hero that sometimes doesn't make it onto lineups. A lot of the time, people will like to make her a homeowner, but her tenants are Halora and Elena. So Arania needs Aspen's tenants, which means Aspen users probably never build Arania. However, if you're a Mockman user, Arania is a tenant for you, so you could consider this. Her destiny improvements are actually really, really impressive. You're gaining extra damage here, potentially, which is really, really helpful. Increases the target's damage over time, which is really nice, so you can stack dot on opponents. Reduces their attack, and the deeper you go here, she's going to deal more burning damage, and it results in a lot of burn pressure from this hero as a whole. Not to mention that Arania herself is incredible at healing, and also buffs your team. There's a lot of sneaky little effects in here that are going to improve things like holy damage, which is really nice, and crit damage as well, which improves the damage pressure that your heroes are capable of. So Arania, an interesting support hero to run alongside Mockman, and has added synergy as a tenant. So if you were looking for a hero to maybe Destiny, she's definitely a good option, because as a Destiny tenant, as we mentioned with the Ailomac, that's going to give a lot of stats to Mockman. I don't know what your better choice here is. I personally would save the Arania for number 7. I think here, my conservative choice would be Elena. My experimental choice would be Alakita. I think Elena gives you more options against Void campaigns specifically. You'll have a good time here against the Void Invasion boss number 2, as this has a lot of control, and Elena can remove that. And also the little minions don't do much damage, so Ailomac will give you shields. So that will be rather helpful. Also, as you get later on into campaign, start dealing with stuff in Chapter 5, there will be annoying Valkyrie waves. I'm thinking about Chapter 531 is notorious for that. And in that case, the Elena dodge will be extremely invaluable. Very helpful for you to keep the pressure of your team up. So I think Elena's the smart pick. I think then I would choose Arania to get that Tenant down. And then after that, I'd bring in Alakita. And I think from there, you've pretty much got a lineup of 8 Transcendence heroes, and I don't think you need anything else after that. When you start thinking about second homes, Mockman is really bizarre in what you have to start doing. Because Mockman says, hey, I really, really like my tenants, so much so that I want them to have a house. Because Arania in a house is based, and Ailomac in a house is based. So you sometimes wish you could move them. So what people sometimes opt to do is either build a second of that hero, or go for whoever the other tenant is, then going and putting stuff like Arania in a house, because you already have the Halora and the Elena. For Ailomac, it's a little more difficult. There's a lot of heroes you would need to pick up. I probably would keep Ailomac as a tenant and just buff him in Destiny to get the shields. There's a lot of times as well, Modern Idle Heroes has gone from Ailomac being this disgustingly necessary hero to being a hero which gets cut so often. He's always the, if I could run him, I would, but I don't. And that's mainly because of Betty. Ailomac says when you get hit and you block, you gain a shield. Betty says, I'm going to crowd control the opponents, so they're not going to hit you. There's counter synergy there. And that means a lot of the time, Ailomac doesn't really do as much as he could. If you needed shields, you'd rather run someone like Freya, or let's say Vesa, or probably, in Mockman's case, Arania. So I actually think Ailomac gets the boot a lot of the time. And you're right, bosses cannot be CC'd, which is then when you need Ailomac. True, absolutely true. So there's things to consider, and there's different fights where other things will be valuable compared to Betty, and that's when Ailomac does make the cut. But even against bosses, I'm pretty sure you don't need the most insane attack stat on Ailomac. You can do okay if you just Destiny him, have a decently respectable train. You don't necessarily need him in a house. And then by having a house free, the other hero to consider, and I think this is definitely an interesting choice, is Natalie, because we already mentioned Natalie is capable of a lot of burst. Homeowner Natalie with Mockman is a very popular choice. And the other choice, which is becoming increasingly more popular, is Alakita, because Betty is a tenant for Alakita. So you can actually improve Alakita's burst potential, and Alakita gets some very, very, very silly damage numbers if you improve her. Dealing extra damage to enemies who've taken debuffs only gets better with age, because as you improve the Destiny on heroes, they get lots of passive debuffs that they deal to opponents. Attack steal, armor steal, stealing things like crit chance and all damage dealt, all damage reduction. There's loads of stuff across many heroes' different Destiny trees, which means the stronger and deeper your Destiny stuff is, the more powerful Alakita becomes, because there's more and more and more debuffs that you're putting out. So later game Mockman accounts are actually considering Alakita as a secondary homeowner. Just something to bear in mind. I think that's something when you're like deep in Destiny though. I think actually I would personally say, hey, no, I'm just going to go with Natalie in my second house. I think that's the safest choice. And then just get your tenants to Destiny, do your classic Destiny upgrades, get Natalie Destiny. And that's where I'd probably be taking the account. Love it. This is a perfect example of how to build a really good Mockman account. And yeah, as has just been said in chat by Zim there, if you do go for Natalie in a second house, you can A-tier her. And that's going to be insane. The damage you'll get from Mockman with Natalie will be absolutely devastating. And it will really just synergize beautifully with the whole account. So yeah, love this. Really, really cool lineup. Definitely showing you how to build Mockman well. And I can just give it a swing real quick, show you how this functions. So we've got a glittery Melody of Universe Mockman. We've got Aylamak with a Demon Bell. Natalie has Elusive, love that. And we've got Demon Bell here on Halora and Betty with Elusive. So we've got full energy feed here, which is really nice. And then our sixth hero is going to be a Transcendence Puppet, because we're going to go into Void Campaign here. And we're just going to finish off Chapter 6. So the lineup will be a backline Mockman. He's more aggressive when you field him on the backline. We'll go with Halora and Nat at the front. We'll go with Betty. Actually, you'll go slot 1 Betty. Let's play traditional. And then we'll go Aylamak, the puppet, and then I'll just put in Phoenix for some extra crit damage. I don't know if you need it, but we should be okay here. I'll go with Betty's core for better crowd control, and we should be okay against this wave. First things first is we need Betty to get hit by Eos, which didn't happen there, unfortunately. Maybe homeowner can hit her. There we go, he did. And our crowd control comes out. Not the best crowd control. We clearly lack some control immunity offset, which we'd gain from the Lady Sunshine hat or other items. But you can see it's no issue for Mockman. All we needed was a little bit of crowd control to give him that active skill, and he completely tore this wave to shreds. There's that next active skill, dominating that Morax. Tons of damage from him, easily chopping that wave to pieces. And this is how Mockman functions. He just wants to burst as much as possible. So there you go, Betty triggering again. We're going to see Halora and Natalie hopefully outspeed the Mockman. Worried about the enemy Mockman hitting ours quite hard, but it's fine. As long as your HP stat isn't 0, it doesn't matter how much HP you have. And look at that! Mockman one-shot the whole thing. And that is Chapter 4 defeated. So Chapter 5 will be pretty much more of the same here for Cujo. He just needs to grind this out and find the time to push. And you might get stuck on Chapter 531. Triple Valkyrie is a menace. But opt in for an Elena, give yourself some dodge, you should be fine. But I'm predicting that's not going to be a problem. I think you'll still beat this, and I think you'll get to Chapter 6 no problem. So hopefully, guys, you've been inspired today. Really, really good Mockman account. Definitely showing you the right path to take, discussing a few of our Transcendence hero options. And yeah, I would recommend Mockman for anyone who's able to get themselves an A tier. So if you're investing in starry gems, or maybe you just high roll an A tier Mockman, it's really nice to use. He's one of the best burst heroes in the game. And as you build a Mockman account, it surprisingly gets better with age. Whereas someone like Lord of Fear Aspen actually gets weaker over time because he starts to struggle more and more to get his overspill damage. But Mockman just becomes stronger and stronger and stronger because of the synergies that he has. And his destiny tree is really, really strong. So Mockman's a really, really cool A-tier hero. Very, very good choice here from Cujo. And you can consider, as I said, adding in A-tier Natalie. That's really strong too. And I think another thing to really consider before you invest in a Mockman is Treasure Train. Because as we discussed previously, having Aylamak with a good attack stat is imperative. And if you can't get that attack stat higher because he's obviously a tenant, so you can't invest in him as a homeowner, then you're going to have to boost that through other means. And that is either going to come from Destiny or from the Treasure Train. And that's the one drawback of Mockman, is your Aylamak is weak. Now, granted, in modern Idle Heroes, as we move through into 2024's later stages, we're seeing less and less people use Aylamak on teams, which is probably fine, but still, when he's needed, you want him to have a high attack stat. You can't just rely on Betty for everything. So yeah, be cautious of that. But Mockman, phenomenal hero if you can invest in him and build your team right. And many would argue has the potential to out-damage and outperform Lord of Fear Aspen in almost every game mode, apart from bosses specifically. Aspen is still better at bosses, but Mockman, definitely a sleeper hero. Used to be the most popular A-tier in the game, but I guess as we've moved forwards and people's opinions have changed, he's become more of like the third pick. And when you're third popular, you actually don't really get seen that much, and no one wants bronze medal. But I think really, Mockman, really good hero. needs a bit of love. Cujo, thanks for letting us go on your account today. If you guys want or have any questions that you need answering about Mockman, or perhaps anything to do with Idle Heroes, let me know in the comments section down below. And if you've got any other guides or tips or tutorials or just showcases you'd like to see, let me know down there too. Anyway, I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, have a good week and happy idling.